The current RNC chair, Michael Whatley, has taken the Senate seat and the endorsement of Trump for North Carolina in this upcoming 2026 Senate election. Now, this is going to be kind of a shock to a lot of people, as I just never thought that this would have been the guy that Trump would have picked. Now, there's multiple people that he could have. For instance, Tom Tillis ducked out the race, thank God, because obviously most people hated him. He managed to get both Democrats and Republicans to dislike him at the exact same time. Had no political future. We dab on his grave. Anyway, so then we also had Lara Trump, who is the wife of Eric Trump, who's Trump's like third child or something. Basically, she was thought that, people thought that she was going to get the endorsement too. The problem with her, though, is that she was saying, oh, it'd be such a pleasure to be appointed by Governor DeSantis to be the Senate appointment in Florida. And then months later, she's going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to run for Senate in North Carolina." The carpetbagger thing really did hurt Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago. And so a lot of people really like to grandstand on that issue. So I think she was a weak candidate to begin with. And so honestly, this is a good endorsement, all things being considered. Now, there's a bunch of people on the backbench, Pat Harrigan or whatever. Nobody cares. They're gone. They're not in consideration. You coulda, shoulda, woulda on Trump's endorsement here, but it seems pretty solid. Let's see what he actually wrote on Truth Social, though. So apparently, he says, to the great people of North Carolina, one of the most capable executives in our country successfully ran, along with Lara Trump, the Republican National Committee. He happens to live in your incredible state, which I love, and won, including primaries, 6 times in a row. My relationship with you has been fantastic and only enhanced by the job I did after January 20th, when I took over the flood-drenched areas that were abandoned by sleepy Joe Biden and your governor, and through the infusion of money and hard work, fixed the problem that like nobody has the ability to do. The one that energized the project and so many more was the chairman of the RNC, Michael Whatley. I am sending the statement out for very good reason. Mike would make an unbelievable senator from North Carolina. He's fantastic at everything he does. So this endorsement is an endorsement. I think Lara Trump was going to be a weak candidate, so this is not bad. If you want to know more about Michael Whatley, he's basically been a guy who's been involved in politics his entire life. Nothing too special. I sat a couple seats from him in a JD Vance rally. Again, didn't get my attention in particular. He is a 57-year-old white guy, which is pretty good for North Carolina. So they know their demographic. He seems to be like a generic Republican in a MAGA sphere, which is not bad, I guess. Now, the strongest candidate for the Democrats is current Governor Roy Cooper, who's won 2 terms, has outperformed Republicans and Donald Trump generally in North Carolina for the past several years. So let's see an attack ad by the Republicans.
The search is over for someone Democrats can dare to count on.
Hello, America. I'm Roy Cooper.
For nearly 40 years, Roy Cooper has delivered a reliable yes for the Democrat Party. Like his wallet-draining yes to higher taxes, or a lock-the-doors yes to closing schools. A fearless yes to pro-Hamas radicals. A no-consequences yes to releasing criminal illegal aliens. A green light yes to men in women's sports. And a bold...
Is that AI? That is AI. I don't know.
Yes for Biden.
Joe Biden saved this nation.
Followed by a never mind, it's Kamala.
My friend Kamala.
No matter...
Okay, that's pretty good, actually. It shows the flippant nature of politics. It shows him as being one of the other ones, which is interesting. He also kind of looks like a corrupt politician. He honestly does look kind of like George W. Bush, kind of 60-year-old white dude. His eyes look kind of weird. Skin's all flabby, given his age. Should not be that bad. It's kind of weird. And then in addition to that, I will say that one counter to it is that Michael Whatley being in the competition is not really enlightening. And by that, I mean that you're putting a 60-year-old white dude versus another one. Not that that's really the issue at hand. It's just that it kind of encapsulates the problem, which is that you have the current Republican National Committee chairman or whatever, who's basically the controller of the swamp, to say it that way, to put it that way. And you're having him go against an establishment candidate like Roy Cooper. So you don't really have outside credentialism in this race at all by either party, which sucks. Lara Trump also wouldn't have had that, because they would have just said, hey, you're a Nepo candidate, which would have been the case, obviously, because she doesn't have credentials to run. However, I will tell you that this ad thus far has been pretty mixed. But I do like this sort of pro-Biden thing, because, yeah, that is pretty unpopular. That's good.
The issue, you already know the answer. Roy Cooper, always a yes to the left.
Okay, so that is a decent ad now that I saw the whole thing. However, I will say that Democrats being unpopular is the key to this sort of messaging. If you're saying he says everything yes to the left, but the midterms, 2026 comes around and Trump's pretty unpopular, then that's actually not that much of an attack now, is it? Now, if Trump is popular, on the contrary, then yeah, obviously, if this guy's pro-Biden, pro-Kamala, then these ads do work. So again, that's up in the air. I don't know what's going to happen over a year from now. But the way that things are right now, it seems like the ad might work. They tackle certain issues like illegal immigration, which is a big issue, obviously, but then also men and women's sports. Again, that's a really 80-20 issue that favors Republicans, so that's smart. However, I will say that at least to me, it's like kind of corny. It's kind of like an easy blow. Like, yeah, we already know this about the Democrats. So I think some Americans might say, okay, this is kind of cheap. Okay, like, yeah, I know they're cringe on the gay stuff, the trans stuff, but what about everything else? And so, I mean, they don't really touch that. They're saying that Governor Cooper is pro-taxes, which, again, is a popular attack. However, how specific are you being? Because if you're just saying, oh, he votes for every tax increase, number one, that doesn't seem to be the case. And secondly, again, if you were to be more specific, then I think people would take that attack as more credible. So, for example, if you were to say, Governor Cooper increased taxes in 2022, that's all you need to say, one line, and that would actually get people to believe you. I don't know. Now, this North Carolina Senate race is uber important when you look at the midterms in 26. You'll notice that there's only really like 3 or 4 states that are going to be that close to follow intensely coming up this upcoming year. And again, when you look at them, you see that the Republicans already control the Senate. So that's already a given. But the margin of which you control the Senate by is extremely important. We already saw this with the big, beautiful bill. You needed every single last vote to get that thing passed. Tom Tillis not voting for it was a big deal. And that may have cost him his whole reelection campaign and all that. So honestly, this endorsement may break or make the Senate, not because the Democrats might win the Senate. I think that's pretty much off the table. But what it could do is, if the worst case were to happen, Susan Collins loses in Maine, Mike Rogers loses in Michigan for a second time, whoop-de-doo, and then also Ossoff wins in Georgia, then you're looking at a Senate that it could be 51-49. And while, again, we keep control of it, it's basically on the hands of in the hands of people like Lisa Murkowski and other Republicans that are pretty anti-Trump, whether you know it or not. People like James Lankford, who tried to make an immigration amnesty deal with Joe Biden, among other people like that. And so honestly, you don't want it to devolve to a stage such as that, because of course you want leverage. If you're MAGA, you want Donald Trump to have cushions when it comes to who's going to flip and who's going to vote for what. And so realistically, if we win North Carolina and nothing else, then at least you have 2 people you can lose in a vote out of 52 and then have JD Vance break the tie going forward. But if you don't have that, it's going to make it that much more difficult. You remember Brett Kavanaugh in 2018. That was a very contentious confirmation from the Senate to the Supreme Court, and every single vote counted in that, even down to Joe Manchin, who was a Democrat. Again, everybody was really looking at who's going to vote for who. That's why not the majority matters, but how big the majority is once you have it. And so North Carolina is going to be super important. Maine is kind of a wild card. It's super blue, but then obviously Susan Collins is very popular. And then Michigan also, swing state. Mike Rogers, very bland candidate. He's balding disgustingly. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Georgia, you have the nominally straight Pete Buttigieg running again. We'll see what happens there. But anyways, my point being said, North Carolina will be among the 3 or 4 most important races to watch in 2026, in my opinion. So anyway, what do you think about this endorsement? I believe that Michael Whatley is like a C+ endorsement. Anyways, like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want more content like this. Comment down below what you think, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Adios.